Hi everybody, I'm Chris Watson and welcome to this edition of the NYSPHSAA Captains Club presented by the New York State Correctional Officers and Police Benevolent Association. Today we're at Delaware Academy in Section 4 to introduce you to Jasper Koota, a two-sport standout for the Bulldogs who, despite only being a junior in high school, has overcome more adversity in his career than most student athletes do in their entire lives. Jasper Koota's love of sports started at a young age. It was almost like he was destined to be an athlete.
His first word was ball, and he says that I make that up, but it's really true.
And his weapon of choice was a soccer ball. Jasper started playing when he was just 2 years old down in New York City and kept playing when his family moved to upstate New York. For him, time on the pitch wasn't so much a competition as it was a release.
I feel like sometimes people have escapes, and so soccer for me has always been that escape. The world could be going on, reality could be going on, but for 80 minutes I could just have my time. His love of sport and soccer trickled down to his younger brother Charlie, who he is incredibly close with.
Yeah, we've always been a fan of soccer, and I didn't really, and when I started playing tennis, I barely had any intentions of it until he joined, so it was just kind of me trying to just follow in his footsteps.
As his skills kept developing, Jasper found he was getting proficient, becoming a student of the chess match that goes on inside a game.
I like it because it really forces you to read the other team, and you're allowed to do well individually, but you have 10 other players on the field that you have to just work with. And I like that if I was having a bad game, I could rely on my other teammates, and I could also instruct them from the field on what they could be doing.
Whatever needed to be done, Jasper was always the guy that was demonstrating or just even leading by example, or getting the cone set up, or what can I do next, coach. He's the kind of player that every coach wants to have on their team, and if there's only one of them, that's great. But if there were more kids like Jasper, more players like Jasper, teams would be better off.
He always coaches me out there, and he's like on the field coach for me, and always helps me with that, and it's just he helps me a lot out there.
After a very good 8th grade season spent on the modified team, he was ready for varsity as a 9th grader. Delaware Academy does not have a JV program, so he was ready to compete at the highest level.
I was doing well in my first couple of practices, but then I just noticed that I would start my opening lap, and I'd just be exhausted by the time the lap would finish, and my heartbeat would get really, really fast, and then at home I would have difficulty, even getting up the stairs. I would be out of breath when I got up the stairs, and it just became really, really nerve-wracking. I didn't know what was happening, so it was just a really scary time, not really knowing what was going on, because something was definitely wrong.
It was his thyroid, and it was causing him major issues in all parts of his life, not just sports.
I had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. That's a very long, complicated name. Basically, it starts off with hyperthyroidism, which is a lot of fatigue, heart rate increasing. I would pass out a lot. I had a few faint spells. But what would happen was my thyroid levels started to normalize, so it seemed like things were going to be okay. But with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, it makes it so that it's hyper and then it becomes hypo. But when I was hyperthyroid, I lost 16 pounds in a month. And then when I was hypothyroid, I gained 32 pounds in a month. So it was just a roller coaster physically and mentally. It was really tough because, as I said, with having an escape, soccer was my really only way to just kind of escape from reality for a brief moment and just recollect myself. And that was just kind of gone. And I'm a pretty good student, but I wasn't able to focus on my academics at all. So I just felt lost, and it didn't feel like anyone could help me because no one could really fix what was going on.
You could just see that he had everything he could do just to be in the classroom, physically present. And there were other days when he would miss assignments due to doctor's appointments and stuff like that. And you could see that he was working through the situation the best that he could and making do, and we just worked through it together the best that we could.
It took months to get the thyroid issue under control, but through it all, he remained on the soccer team. Unable to compete in games, his teammates knew how much he needed their support, so they chose Jasper to take penalty kicks when they had them. It kept him in the action and engaged with his team.
Once my teammates found out, they were incredibly supportive, and you know, I was supposed to be someone that was going to come up to varsity and just do incredibly well right away, and that just wasn't happening. So it was a little frustration on the part of the team in the beginning, but once I kind of told them that I had a diagnosis, then it became something they could help me with.
With his medical issues under control, it was time for his sophomore season.
Sophomore year was pretty great. Me and my teammate Nate Moon, he was first in the state, according to Max Preps, first in the state in like goals and assists, and I think I was third. I had like 59 points, I think, something like that. It was like for a sophomore year, it was. I want to stay humble, but like it was a pretty awesome season.
He loves the sport so much, and seeing him so happy, and not just him, but his teammates. You know, that team was one of those teams where they all loved each other so much, and they were all there for each other so much. And just seeing the way they all embraced it. But God, it was a great year.
As a 10th grader, Jasper had a new appreciation for the game.
I knew what it was like to live without soccer, and that was horrible. So I wanted to make every moment that I had it to be the best that it possibly could be. And so I just made sure, you know, every single game, every practice I took seriously. For me, like personally, just knowing that I had to appreciate every single moment that I had with the sport.
Coming off a breakout season as a sophomore, in his first year as a varsity player, Jasper was elected team captain. Delaware Academy thought 2017 was going to be a huge year for their program and their rising star player.
He had a great sophomore season. I think he scored 22 or 24 goals, 22 goals. And coming into last fall, I expected him to meet or exceed that as far as a scoring total, or at least set other players up to have that sort of an impact.
It felt really good. My skills were at a level that I hadn't like seen before, and it was good because like it was just happening. Things were just falling into place. I was a captain as a junior, which is something that doesn't really happen that much. So I felt like I had this new level of responsibility, and it was really good. And I just kind of expected that I would thrive throughout the season and that our team would do well as a result of that.
He scored 2 goals in the first 2 games of the year, but in the 3rd game of the season, Jasper's world came crashing down again.
I jumped up for the ball, and I think there might have been a divot in the ground or something, I'm not really sure, but I didn't get as high as I was expecting to get, and then the ball hit my head and I did like a somersault, and I was on the ground and my knee just started to ache, and it wasn't like a screaming pain, but it was aching. I didn't think it was anything serious because I wasn't in like screaming pain at all, but something felt wrong.
It was awful. I mean, I think that the worst thing about being a parent is being helpless to your child. When you see your child suffering and not being able to do anything to help them but love them and take them to the doctor.
Jasper had torn his ACL and his meniscus. His season was over, just 2 games and 10 minutes into his junior year.
When you do have an injury, you put it off for so long, you deny it for so long, like it's not going to be anything serious, and then by putting down all those emotions, when you finally hear that it's the worst news, it just all hits you at the same time. And I just went into my room and I was crying for a very long time, and I wasn't really thinking about the future or anything like that. I was just kind of thinking about how horrible it was going to be to lose soccer again.
There's nothing worse than watching your child be in pain and suffer, and soccer was his everything. It was, and especially you know, in middle school and being a freshman in high school, and so much of his identity, you know, outside of his academics came from being on the soccer field.
There were lots of sad times after the initial diagnosis and even after the surgery. But Jasper's been through hard times before. His infectious personality and incredibly positive attitude started to take over.
Many people in both cases, even with one of the problems he's had, might give up, might struggle with that, but he really hasn't at all. I mean, it's amazing.
He's a tough kid. I haven't seen anyone fight through the things that he has back to back and still overcome it. He is probably one of the most toughest kids I've ever seen, mentally and physically, throughout college soccer as well. Just the way he battles back from it. A lot of kids would give up.
Can't is not a word with Jasper, and he's a fine young man.
Koota tells her boys, when life gives you lemons, learn to love lemons. Don't look for the sugar to make lemonade. That would be too easy. You have to appreciate what you have instead.
If you let one thing when you're 16 years old knock you down, what are you going to be when you're 30? You know? This is, things happen for reasons. You get, this, I don't think he'd be the person that he is. And I don't think that he would be the optimist that he is if he hadn't overcome the adversity that he's overcome. I mean, he inspires me.
I would take 100 Jaspers, and he comes from a strong family. He stands up for what he believes in, and in this day and age, that gets harder and harder, especially as a teenager.
At first, he was obviously very disappointed, maybe even mad at the situation. Not mad at anyone in general, but just mad at the situation. Certainly disappointment, and I've seen slowly a smile come back to his face. The first 2 weeks he was, I wouldn't say he was miserable, but he put on a good face.
I always say the things you can teach outside of how to shoot a ball, how to kick a ball, how to throw a ball, Jasper has those intangibles, how to lead, how to set an example, how to persevere. When life throws a curveball at you, sometimes you get knocked down, but Jasper, he gets back up. And he continues to get back up.
Through his own adversity, Jasper has found time for other interests. He enjoys singing, he organized a community-wide concert, and he volunteers.
Being a part of the Student Athletic Advisory Committee it's an amazing experience because I get to meet students from all parts of the state and see how things are sort of run in their sections and in their schools and how it's a little different from our schools. And together we can all sort of work because we're all very passionate about athletics, but we're also driven students as well.
He's always been a driven young man. He's always been, you could see leadership potential in him modified. I think if anything, he's learned how to lead without a ball. He can just lead in life. Lead in general is maybe where he's grown the most.
He's definitely a student that has his head on straight in terms of his goals. He knows odds of making it in the professional sports world are a whole lot less than making it in the academics, and he's got his priorities on straight.
Music and reading just became two things for me that I knew that were going to take the place of soccer while it had to. And I mean, I just think that not putting all of your eggs into one basket, making sure that you experience a lot of different things and find passions that you might not even know that you have is incredibly important. And that's what I definitely learned having soccer be gone for so long.
Those closest to Jasper know what a long haul it's been for him at times, but he's the type of person who can get through anything.
He always looks for the silver lining, and a little bump in the road or a big bump in the road, he always seems to be able to overcome it and find a way to self-reflect, but also then transcend that to the rest of his classmates. And I've learned a lot from Jasper, and I admire him.
For anyone that is experiencing injury and can't really do anything about it, just has to wait, just know that it's not going to be easy at all, but because it's not easy, you're going to learn something from it, and make sure that you take a lesson away from it, because dealing with adversity through injury is going to make dealing with adversity through working hard in sports and making sure that you're working out and taking care of your body, it's going to make that so much easier. So just taking away appreciation from the hardships that not having sports can be, making sure that you take away that lesson is just incredibly important.
As you can tell, Jasper's comeback story isn't complete just yet. He hopes to rejoin his soccer teammates on the field when the season starts in August. We hope his story of dedication and perseverance inspires you the next time you face adversity in your life. For this edition of the NYSPHSAA Captains Club, presented by the New York State Correctional Officers and Police Benevolent Association, I'm Chris Watson. We'll see you next time.